What's up, party people in the house? It's Friday. In fact, it's August. It is a miracle we made it. No, I don't believe in miracles. I believe in hard work. I believe in people and resilience. And a lot of you have shown that. Welcome. You are listening to the Entrepreneurial Web. I'm your host, Jeremiah Fox. Before I bring on my guest, the message of the week. This comes from another Jersey boy. Hint, hint, we got a dude from Jersey on the show today. Another Jersey boy, one of my first bosses, mentor. He was on the show back in April, I think. His name is Anthony Di Silvestro. He now resides in Virginia Beach in Norfolk, Virginia. He, among other things, is a restaurateur, a very successful restaurateur. And this is a quote from the show he did back in April. He said, as entrepreneurs, we're leaders. None of us are in the restaurant business, because I am too. So he was talking about he and I and other restaurateurs. But we're in the customer service biz. If you can teach your employees that you're in the customer service business, the better you do that, the better you succeed. That will set the tone for today's show. With that, I would like to bring on today's Jersey boy, Lance Knaub. Lance, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome. Are you originally from Jersey? Or are you a transplant like me?
I'm a transplant. I'm from
Nice.
York, Pennsylvania.
York, Pennsylvania. I'm originally from Nashville, but I've moved around a lot and landed in New York about 20 years ago. And here we are. How long have you been in? I mean, York, Pennsylvania is right there. You're basically Jersey. How
Well,
long? Go ahead.
I've actually am a little bit of a rebel myself. I was born in
Ooh,
Jackson, Mississippi, even though both of my parents are from
nice.
Pennsylvania. And I've
Nice.
been in New Jersey for about 20 some years
Yeah.
already.
All right. Yeah, we're in a very similar boat. So Lance here did a number of things. I won't click them all off, but I'll list some. You're an author. You're an entrepreneur. You're a consultant, and you're also in fitness and physical therapy with a doctorate, right? Are you like Dr. Sakib and you're like, don't call me doctor? Like people get upset. You're not a doctor, right? But you have a doctorate or a PhD in physical therapy as well.
Correct. Absolutely correct. Yep. So the terminal degree in physical therapy is a doctorate of physical therapy.
Yeah.
So just like Sakib, I'm a doctor of physical therapy.
Cool. So we connected. This is a daisy chain through Dr. Sakib, who was on the show last month, who I connected with Dom through Dom Jackson because he was on his show like several months ago, and Dom and I met on Twitter. So this is a Twitter podcast, LinkedIn. Even though we probably live like an hour away from each other, that's pretty hilarious. Um, did I miss anything in your Rolodex of skills? And do you do jujitsu? Because if you did, man, we would be like doppelgangers.
I know
Although,
that's so funny. Probably the most important thing is, just like you, I think you have three children also, definitely
yeah,
husband, father of three,
yeah,
fantastic kids. And definitely have a connection for you. A friend of mine who had a military background, and they created a leadership program built around jiu-jitsu. So we'll talk about that. And
cool. Would love
I do
to.
not do jiu-jitsu currently, but I was thinking in my mind, because I know how passionate you are, what
Yeah,
martial arts experiences I have, and maybe we'll touch on that.
cool. That'd be great. So give everybody a little background. I mean, you have a PhD in physical therapy. What led up to that?
Yeah, so I knew I loved people, and I knew I loved health, and guidance counseling was maybe not the strongest at my school. So I didn't really know about a lot of the options.
Yeah,
Independently, I thought pharmacy sounded good because I didn't have the discipline or drive at all to entertain medical school. I
yeah,
graduated high school when I was 17, and I applied to pharmacy schools, and this was probably a bad thing as well. I got accepted to all the pharmacy schools I applied to. So I was 17, big ego, and very poor study habits. It's not a good recipe for freshman year in college, but that's a whole nother story.
that's another podcast. Right?
So
I
I
think I need
was
two for mine.
Oh, totally. So I was at Rutgers, and I started off in the College
Cool.
of Pharmacy, and then I was kind of undeclared bio, pre-med, exercise science. Don't even remember the exact order. But fortunately, Andrea Ehrenheim mentioned physical therapy and mentioned that she was volunteering at Robert Wood Johnson. I said, what is that? Luckily, I wasn't injured in high school, as you know, the sports I played, and checked it out, fell in love immediately, and eventually finished physical therapy school. And I had this passion for fitness, and my bachelor's degree was in exercise science. And I observed pretty quickly that there was a really incredible synergy between physical therapy and fitness. And not many places really were doing that. And the ones that were, a lot of them were operating in silos. They were sort of outsourcing the fitness or the physical therapy and the massage and nutrition and personal training. So I wanted to bring it under one roof. And, after about 5 years of working, I worked in brain injury for about a year, and that might connect the dots to some mental health issues. And I know you're big on that in mindset.
Yeah.
And then I really went straight to my true passion. I brought that neurological experience into outpatient orthopedics, and I did that for 2 different companies for about 5 years, and then took the entrepreneurial leap with my wife and started a physical therapy practice within a fitness center in 300 square feet, about the size of an average bedroom.
Yeah.
And after about 5 years, we, within the first 5 years, within 1 year, we actually bought the fitness center that we rented from. And then we started a second location. And then we had a third location around 2011. And my wife and I were adding to our family. And that's a milestone that I'll mention. We were having a lot of success, but certainly there's a lot of stress, a lot of things to manage. And even being a physical therapist, personal trainer, that's when my health stopped cooperating, and I was pushing the envelope too much, even though I was serving other people that way, and my GI system stopped working. So fortunately, I was able to.
What is that, GS?
My gastrointestinal system, my stomach, my digestive system just didn't want food in, only wanted things out, basically couldn't eat.
Coffee only?
Not even coffee. I mean, pretty much the brat, bread, rice, applesauce. I mean, pretty miserable, and being near a bathroom at all times with kind of like an upset stomach and really like low energy because you're not digesting food. And I can remember standing at that time, we had 3 offices, about 30 people. And I was trying to inspire and to, run a company-wide meeting that I'll just never forget. But fortunately, powered through that, and we continued to, personally, I continued to work on my health, work on my professional and business skills, and develop our best people. And we took on a couple of our best people as partners. And in 2018, one of our partners really wanted to actually run and operate the company, and they've been doing that. And that's allowed me to kind of just expand my desire and love for helping people stay healthy. And now I want to share everything with entrepreneurs, and especially on the staying healthy part while you grow a business.
Your gastrointestinal issues, were they related to stress and just overworking? And because I know you talked about that in a number of your brief broadcasts that I've watched.
Yes. I mean, I had an endoscopy and, saw my primary care and saw a GI specialist and had the endoscopy. And, fortunately, quote, nothing was wrong.
Yeah.
But, so the final analysis was that it's probably stress. And even in hindsight, talking to doctors, but they couldn't quite figure it out, which was good. Nothing obvious, and wasn't, it was Crohn's or some really, serious heavy duty diseases, cancer, things that you worry about.
Right. I went through something similar. I was a bit younger. I was about 25. Same thing, ended up in an emergency room and endoscopy and the whole thing. And they basically, none of the doctors knew anything. It was crazy. And one of the nurses, he was a male nurse. He was probably in his early 30s, and I was a restaurant guy. And he just kind of like, he was like, let me guess, you do X, Y, Z all the time. Da, 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 da. I was like, yeah. And he goes, you can't do that anymore. Like it was just literally like living too hard, just firing on all cylinders, mixing in some, self-medication, and some fun. And it's just like, it's time to start thinking differently, about your body. I was always fit as well, always active, not out of shape, but you know, your body will tell you when it's like, oh, it's enough. I had one of those this week. I have had a pinch in my back. I'd just been doing really hard workouts for maybe like 6 weeks straight, no breaks. Like every day I would just get up, and I was getting stronger and feeling better and better and better, you know. But in your mid 40s, you can't do that for like super prolonged periods, right? And on Monday, my body was like, it's time for a break. And, you know, I listened. I got my workout in this morning though, so I feel much better. What were some of the things that you did to help you kind of get back on track physically, that helped you get to that mental state where you really found some great success?
Yeah. And, you know, I think one thing that's probably worth pointing out before we talk about that is the warning signs. There's probably like early warning signs, some indicators that we could all listen to with our bodies. And, you know, when your energy's down and your stomach might be upset, or your head is foggy, you know, and kind of connecting to your question now, I think that the good news is you can kind of break in and start to get more sleep or get that first workout, and it's all synergistic with all the different health components. But the same is also true. You know, you miss one night's sleep. And I just talked to an entrepreneur yesterday who I'm working with, who his business is exploding, which is awesome. However, he said he pulled 3 all-nighters in the last 7 days, and he was looking at another one in the next 2 days. So, and sleep is probably, it's a common pattern that's one of the first things that entrepreneurs tend to squeeze out. You know, the first thing you cut. I was at a seminar with Mr. Wonderful, I don't know, 8 months ago in Trenton. And there was an entrepreneur who already had 2 businesses. She was a franchisor. I mean, she was 30 tops. And she had, I think, 50 locations nationally, really doing well, crushing it. She was thinking about taking one of these business opportunities that Mr. Wonderful was presenting. And I was like, well, are you sure you have the resources? Do you have the time for this? She's like, I'm just going to sleep a little bit less. I was like, well, how much are you sleeping now? And she's like, oh, about 5 hours. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, sleep is definitely one that we first compromised. And then as far as what I did, I had to take baby steps for sure. And, you know, definitely my body forced me to take a little bit better care of myself. So I think immediately I did sleep a little bit more, and it certainly wasn't, you know, dramatic. You know, the recommendation, if you're getting less than 7 hours of sleep, you're considered sleep deprived.
Yeah.
So I definitely was nowhere near 7, but maybe I was now forcing myself to get 6. And I was making sure to eat a little bit better and not to eat standing up. And, you know, I mean,
that's bad. I eat most of my meals standing. Shit, I eat most of my meals walking.
You know, the standing part is probably not bad. And actually, no, that's a recommendation from a physical therapist who's really a health expert. However, I think you can't be like multitasking. Your body is meant to digest.
Yeah.
Like you sort of have to relax and actually chew your food and start the
I
digestive
chew.
process.
I just like, it's my jaw and my feet often at the same time. Damn.
Well, you have to think about that. That's one action item to put on your list already.
Cool. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll pick back up with that. I'll go think about that for a few. We'll be back in just a minute, everybody. You're listening to the Entrepreneurial Web. Okay, everybody, we're back. You're listening to the Entrepreneurial Web. I'm going to go ahead and dub this hour on Friday the new Friday happy hour, because shit, most bars can't operate in New York City anyway. So this is a new happy hour. You're listening to Lance Knaub. He is, again, an author. He is an entrepreneur. He is a consultant. He has a PhD in physical therapy. I think there's a couple other things we're going to get to towards the end of this show. So let's welcome Lance back to the show. What's up, Lance? You still there?
I'm still here, baby. It's all good.
Great. It's so funny when I talk and I come back on the show, I don't see anything. So I'm just like, man, I hope they're still there. Every time I'm like, every break of every show, I'm like, what if they left? What if they were just
know, speaking of that, how do you hold up with counting on guests for a live show?
Man, it's a shot in the dark. You know, a couple of weeks ago, I had one of my friends and neighbors. I mean, the guy literally lives around the corner from me. And, you know, we had gone back and forth. We set everything up. And the morning of the show, I was like, I'll text you the morning of. He's like, okay, I see this guy all the time too. I text him. Didn't hear back. I'm like, okay. Right before the show, called, nothing. I was like, all right. So, Sam, the producer, was like, time to hop on. So I hopped on and I was like, guys, it might just be me today. And then he finally joins and he's like, just a few minutes later, he's like, sorry, I went for a run. I didn't have my phone. And then I just really needed a shower because it was hot. But then when he came on, he didn't have video and there was no time to fix it. We were live. It was just like, oh, well, everybody gets to look at me today.
Nice.
I was like, he's a pretty guy, but whatever. You'll have to look him up on Tinder or whatever. Okay, so back to focus. So the company you were talking about that you started a PT company within a gym and you ended up buying out that and then expanding to 3 locations. What is the name? That it's still a current business, correct?
Correct.
What's the name of that?
Breakthru Physical Therapy and Fitness. And when we bought the fitness center, then we took another entrepreneurial leap that probably wasn't well grounded, and it probably
I've done that before.
without enough of a business plan, which I would not advise any of these things. We took on a 6,000 square foot space, which is really pretty brave in the physical therapy world. Now, granted, we did have some, fitness, membership and revenue, but it was still pretty big. So we really designed a beautiful 6,000 foot space to kind of bring physical therapy and fitness together, which still isn't perfected nationally, including us. We're still trying to bring it together, perfect it for the clients and having a lot of fun doing it. But most people are kind of like, and I heard Matthias and his wife on your last interview, fitness, if you compare industries, is a lower profit industry.
Sure.
So some people just say, well, just focus on your physical therapy, more medical. But we don't want to do that. We want to create the best product and, take on the challenge.
And I think the more you diversify your offerings, if you don't overextend yourself in terms of labor, you just have better chances of survival. Like the same is true of martial arts schools. If you only offer striking, you're missing out on, some of the students you would get if you also offer jujitsu, or if you only offer jujitsu and you don't offer any stand-up or striking, arts or just general fitness as well, to kind of tie it on, because it all is very much tied in, especially when you're talking about martial arts and fitness. The great Rickson Gracie, one of the, best all-time fighters in modern history, talks about that a lot, especially lately. Like, this needs to be brought to the surface more, where there's a lot of schools that are exclusively jujitsu, and that's all they do. You walk in, you drop down to the ground, you just roll around, no discussion really about fitness or training your body in any other way than just the techniques. Definitely not offering any stand-up. And he just, his point is you would service your community so much more if you had more of those offerings. And the thing is a lot of those guys are well versed in that as well. A lot of the instructors or a lot of the owners, they know it. It's just a matter of do they want to teach it or not? Do they want to spend the time? And if they don't, is it feasible to hire somebody? Does it make sense for their business? Their financials to bring somebody in who could do that. But the idea being that it becomes a service to the community. And I think that's seems like what your one of your core values is how you can service your community and have a wide offerings. I mean, you don't open a 6,000 square foot space without that. You know what you need? You need some jiu-jitsu in there. We'll take
Absolutely.
3,000 square feet.
That sounds good. I mean, you bring up a great point. It's kind of like a business conflict that I talk about in my book, and just that entrepreneurs need to know, because diversification does protect you. However, you do need to really, I think Jim Collins and Good to Great calls it the hedgehog effect. You really need to, dominate your one market, and many businesses have failed in trying to offer new profit centers too early. So it's a cash flow. It's really complicated, but we definitely are committed to accomplishing it and bringing on, incredibly passionate people in the fitness world, like Dr. Saqib, is part of the equation for success.
So you have 3 locations now for Break-Thru, is that correct?
So we have 5, and we are planning on a 6th at the end of the year. I mean, that may get adjusted, pushed back a little bit, but we'll see.
Yeah. And have you franchised yet, or is this all still internal?
Great question. No, we're independent. I think we probably want to stay that way. However, there was a time when I did research, franchising and consider being a franchisor. And it was a great learning process. And the benefit would have been helping physical therapists who often tend to really be passionate about the clinical work, probably the technician work, the work in the business, not the work on the business.
Right.
And maybe it could help more physical therapists, be an owner and run their own practices. We didn't go down that path. But we certainly would never rule it out, but we're very independent and fighting a lot of big players.
And a pandemic, right? So you mentioned, opening, hopefully something else by the end of the year. What is the situation with your spaces right now, given that there's, strict protocol? I mean, have they opened gyms back up in New Jersey yet?
No. However, you can do personal training inside. So either one-on-one, and you could do partner if they're within the same household, like husband and wife. And we've done some sports performance outside to try to pivot and innovate. And, even, I know with Matthias and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and just all the fitness places, I totally empathize with New York because it is hard. Now, one thing we did, and I know it was brought up, that people are kind of getting burnt out from online, but I do think you have to continue to take a step back and try to come up with some new options and innovate.
And I don't think digital is going away. What, even before the pandemic, it was like, this increasingly needs to become part of your business. Right. Because you just never know. I also interviewed, he's in Northern New Jersey, Carl Pravik. He's also known as Silver Fox. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt and I think he has 3 or 4 schools. I think he just rolled another one out too, like in the last month or so. And he had already, he'd been in business for 14 to 15 years. He already had a good online presence. He's also written a book, but he had developed his online presence previously to the extent that he was able to do a YouTube live every day for the first 99 days of the pandemic. And, they don't give those out to everybody. Like, you really have to have like a good following on YouTube to be able to broadcast YouTube live. It's not like Facebook and Instagram where it's just like any user can do it. You have to be like top tier. So he held virtual classes with worldwide attendance. So this guy was already thinking in that way, and he had a big reach, but it serviced him so much during this because he got the last, when he was on the show, I think it was in May, he had gotten no assistance. He had gotten no loans or grants or anything. And he kept his entire teaching staff employed and just like stayed current with everything. He continued to collect whatever tuition he could, but he also continued to offer service of some form. And, jiu-jitsu really sucks digitally. It's like you need a partner, you need that interaction, but it's also the idea that, you have to continue doing something. Like, even if you're just doing solo drills on a soft floor on your own, that's going to keep you in the continuum. So when things open back up, you're not knocked back in the woods, however many years. I mean, I put way too much training in to let that happen. So I just continued. Fortunately, my wife and daughters train. So I had training partners the whole time and kept it up. But, it can be challenging. But I love his resilience and his refusal to give up. And he just went at it and actually held virtual classes where he would show a technique and then the camera guy would see the questions pop up and he would answer questions. And sometimes they'd be in the Ukraine. Sometimes they were in California. And he was just like hanging out in North Jersey. It was pretty fascinating.
That's amazing. Totally, worth, emulating and studying that example I think the one big lesson I take away is taking time to step back away from things and being strategic, being on the front edge, because, that is actually one thing that I really, I hate to use the word preach, but definitely emphasize with entrepreneurs, because I've noticed that 90% of small business owners don't have business plans.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate enough to have a mentor that kind of taught me a traditional business plan. And I was sort of trying to, when I started Denali and started doing some small business coaching, trying to encourage entrepreneurs to do this. And it just wasn't realistic to spend 40, 80, 120 hours to do it. So I did, kind of merge, Ray Dalio, some thoughts I heard him say, and just my observations. And I realized that it can be a much smaller amount of time, but just doing some strategic work and getting like a functional game plan that's actionable and that you can really use and make it come to life will totally, set you apart. For example, Silver Fox, like
Yeah.
he obviously was already positioned to do that and capitalized on it.
Yeah. And he had a financial background prior, so he was always, in that headspace. But yeah, and you mentioned some great people to emulate, like Ray Dalio. And I like that you pointed out, like, it doesn't have to be a set hardcore plan, but some kind of structure. It kind of has to morph, especially these days, right? It has to have a little elbow room because things are changing so quickly. But still, as long as I mean, I've had to deal with this in the restaurant over the last 6 months, where it just keeps changing. Like, and now we have to think about, well, what does the winter look like? What does next year look like? What are we? And again, going back to the quote at the beginning that my old boss said, it's about customer service. It's not about thinking, well, I'm a restaurant, I serve food, I serve people indoors. It's about always analyzing, knowing what your service is, like, or knowing your why, right, is another great one. Why are you doing it? And you'll, at least have that framework, and then you can figure out, you can make adjustments to that structure. We're going to take another break. And when we come back, I want to talk about your book.
Awesome.
Awesome. Okay, everybody, hang tight. We'll be back in a few. Okay, everybody, again, we're back. We're talking with Lance Knaub. I've mentioned it a number of times in the show already. He is an author. Lance, tell us all about your book. Is it a kid's book? Is it picture friendly?
I did
you know, dads, remember sometimes I'm like, I'm going to exploit my kids some way. These things are going to pay off. Daddy
only
wants a
my
boat.
youngest child was willing to participate, but she has some illustrations in there. So check it out.
Great, great.
She's
Oh, I'd
featured,
love
but
to see. I'd love to
it's,
see.
it's for, adults. It's for entrepreneurs, and especially entrepreneurs who are often overwhelmed and managing thousands of, variables and, feeling burnout.
Yeah, yeah. So what is the name of the book?
So the book is called The 4% Breakthru.
Uh-huh.
And, that kind of connects to some of the stats and even Michael Gerber's comment that, 80% of businesses fail in the first 5 years, and don't get too excited if you're, in that 20%, because by the way, 80% of that 20% fail in the next
Right.
5 years. So if you actually do the math, it's 96% of small businesses fail in 10 years.
Yep. Very true. And I think it's a little exacerbated since March.
Yes.
It's definitely been a little Darwin near, what would you say? Darwin like?
Yes.
What's the word?
Darwinian.
Yeah, exactly. I got tangled up on that one. It around where we're at too, because there's a high concentration, coffee shops on top of coffee shops, and just like so many, it's just saturated. Anybody that was just like teetering already, it was just like a whoosh, just a quick swat, and they were gone,
Yeah.
like really gone. And of course there are some that are losing out just because of the government restrictions, like small private gyms,
Right.
and practices like that just you're literally not allowed to operate, not at all, but like it's the restrictions are very tight. It's really hard to figure out like how to make money with like some of the highest rents in the world,
Right.
some of the bureaucracy you have to, excuse me, go through to operate a business in New York City is like unparalleled. It's just crazy. If you can pull it off here, you can pull it off anywhere, because it's just there's people constantly dipping in. And it's like, oh, this guy needs that and this guy needs that, and it's all just like change coming out of your pocket. So battling all of those fronts at the same time, it's like super overwhelming. What drove you to like write a book? I mean, were you a writer before? Did you have a background in that, or?
No. So, really in 2018, when, we had Dr. Nate taking over as CEO, and we had basically a self-sufficient leadership team operating Breakthru, I was able to kind of explore my passion, which is really developing people and, leadership development and just leadership. So I looked into, I really had all my investments really so much into a small business. So I kind of wanted to diversify a little bit and,
Yeah.
do my passion. So I looked at franchising and I realized I'm way too entrepreneurial for that. And then I went to Podcast Movement actually in Philadelphia to see John Lee Dumas, who I emulate, when I found out pretty short notice that he was there. And when I was there was Chandler Bolt was there from Self-Publishing School, and Lisa Zelalnik just helped walk me through how a book would really help me serve entrepreneurs and, small business owners better. And I have a little bit more credibility. And also I'd really be getting my message out to the masses a little bit more. So that kind of inspired it.
And what was that process like? I mean, did you have to, aside from,
Painful.
your knowledge, was there a monetary investment that you had to put out up front? Did you write it, or did you have, people script it for you? Because like, I would love to write a book. I feel like I have so much to say, but if you want me to concentrate those thoughts into like something that resembles a book that people would read, it would be like a disaster.
Great questions. You have to do like a mind map or brainstorm first. And there's a process to writing a book, and which actually connects to my book. I wanted to make it easy and make it a process. And then once you do your mind map, you create your chapters, your outline, and then you do a mind map on each chapter. And then you really do have to commit to writing a little bit every day, just like you're going to read, because otherwise you get a little bit separated from it. Mm-hmm. So you have to keep it fresh. And even if it's only 30 minutes, you have to write a little bit a day. Now, I did put about 18 months, probably on average about 20 hours a week into the book. And I tend to have a lot of perfectionism in me, and especially the health section. So my book is actually 3 steps or sections. The first is some introspective thought, personal development exercises. And that kind of connects to your mission that you mentioned, your why. That's the very first step or chapter in the book. So there's several more just like that, and we can drill down on any of them if you'd like to. And then the second step also has 5 sub steps, and that's sort of developing your team and best business practice. And then lastly, it's actionable health information. And this is mental health, nutrition, sleep, exercise, and posture and ergonomics. And this is really where I got caught up being a doctor of physical therapy. I drilled down on the research because I wanted it to be evidence-based and scientific and sound information.
One of the things that you stress in all of your especially your social media is the ability for you to separate from your business to an extent, at least, even all the way to like hands off where other people are running it for you. And is that really like the essence of the book? That's what it's driving people towards, is to be able to continue to be an entrepreneur, but continue to live your life and not be like, what's the E-Myth? You have to be familiar with that book. Are you familiar with that one?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's what I was saying. Michael Gerber is the author.
But yeah, Michael Gerber, that's who. I knew when you said that name, I was like, man, I recognize that name. Or when I started reading that, it really it dawned on me, this is like 4 or 5 years ago, stop working in your business and start working for it. Now, it's funny because the pandemic, I'd really gotten, loose on the reins, and this just made it all come right back. And we talked about this last week 2 weeks ago with my guest, Ryan Clearwater, about how important, he grew up in a small business family, entrepreneurial parents, and he as a kid participated in his parents' business, and my kids are getting the same thing, and we're very present right now. And that's what's really succeeding us. But I look forward to the time where I can kind of let go of those reins a little bit more. I'm having fun. I'm enjoying it. But it's interesting because I pushed really hard. I'd put 3 or 4 years work into that, and, really quickly got kind of snapped back, which feels good. But do you want to talk about that for a minute? Like the difference between the two and why each are important?
Sure. So to answer your question, I think it's going to be individual. Once people answer those, their purpose, their why, their cause, their mission, and then you kind of slice it a few different ways. Like I like people to think about their perfect life and then even their perfect professional life, because most people with their perfect life think about financial freedom, but we kind of have to get there as a perfect professional life. And that might be having a little bit of lifestyle freedom or geographic freedom and so on. And then I kind of tweaked Stephen Covey's funeral exercise, because he says, think about what you want other people to say at the end of your life. This is step 3, chapter 3. And really, to me, I think an improvement on that exercise is, what do you want to be able to say about yourself if you think of your life as an entire body of work? Because other people have their own perspectives and that may be flawed. So, you have to decide. And then you really do a hard self-assessment in step 4. And then step 5 is a success schedule. So once you've kind of done these type of things, and you really thought about your mission and your vision, you'll know what's going to bring you joy and true happiness and satisfaction. And for some people, that might be not being the operator, right? Not doing the jujitsu training, or being the baker, or being the physical therapist, being the accountant, being the attorney. And it might change over time. They might really want to have more resources to run the company, or to do marketing, or whatever. They might want to let their team run the company, like Gino Wickman did, the author of Traction, which our team really emulates his book. So not many entrepreneurs, I'm really fortunate and blessed, and this is why I want to share my message, have gotten to the point where they've created a self-sufficient, leadership team who can fearlessly run their organization. Because for me, my passion, I'm still treating, but I'm not doing any of the leadership management hats. And of course, I'm still helping as needed, but not on a formal basis. So my real passion is now, coaching and helping entrepreneurs. So I've been fortunate enough to do that because the team is, running, Breakthru, running the organization.
You must be familiar with this Jersey boy, Gary Vaynerchuk.
Absolutely.
Sure, you've heard of him. He posted something recently. It was a picture of him and his like head of photography and video production. And he said, hire the people for your company to do the shit you don't want to do. And that was, I knew that already, but when I saw that, I was like, straight up, because within my businesses, I mean, there's a few of them, and I love to do certain aspects of all of them, but I don't like doing all of, everything in all of them. And I think people need to think about that more. It's good to know at least like have an elementary knowledge of all the little things, like, because you never know what's going to happen. I mean, again, what happened to me recently, like I lost half my staff, not because, we laid them off or anything. They left. They were scared. They took off and they just left.
I heard you mention that in an episode. Yeah. The only thing I'd add to your comment, to Gary V's comment, is that
that's right. Credit me for Gary V. I like that. Tell them to send a check, man.
You definitely need to know your strengths, right? And most expert opinion is to focus on your strengths.
Yeah.
However, I do think you can't outsource your weaknesses and the jobs you don't like too soon. You have to be ready. Right. You have to be financially ready, because some people do that, and then they, if they just don't have enough revenue coming in, if they're not profitable,
turns into a liability. Yeah,
totally. Now, for me right now, as a sort of solopreneur and getting started all over again, and I'm loving learning all these skills, because even when we started in 2004 with Breakthru, we didn't even have a website. The world was totally different. Yeah. But right now, I mean, I'm learning, how to do, use all these apps and softwares and e-blasts, and I mean, you name it. I mean, use social media. I totally work through our expert team and delegated all that. So I'm having a blast, but I definitely am already planning, when I hit certain milestones, the things that I will definitely give away.
Yeah, no, I hear that. Same here. Cool. We're going to take another quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about Denali Consulting and just, where people can get in touch with you and find out more. All right, everybody. We'll be back in just a few. You're listening to the Entrepreneurial Web. Okay, everybody, we're back again. It's the Entrepreneurial Web, that Friday happy hour, 12 to noon. We're talking to Lance Knaub out of New Jersey, author, entrepreneur, fitness PhD. This guy's everything. No jujitsu yet, but it's coming soon. So you, as well as Breakthru, your book, you also started and founded Denali Consulting, correct?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So, as I said, in 2018, when one of our partners, and it's probably worth mentioning that in developing our people, part of what I really saw as the win-win was having some of our best people join us as equity partners, so they can literally share in the profitability.
It's such a special thing, right? When I'm close to that, but and I've received that. It's fantastic, to pass that on. That is I think that's one of the best contributions you can make to your people.
Totally agree. And I want to, happy to share all the lessons learned, but we've got an incredible team. So, Dr. Kevin Schnitzer came on as a partner, then Dr. Nate Stelz, and then Dr. Nick Nolan. And, those guys and the rest of our leaders, running the company in 2018, as I mentioned, I knew I wanted to, help share all my lessons learned and do some coaching. So after I realized that, I was too entrepreneurial for franchising, I started a company. And John Lee Dumas, who I mentioned, he actually wrote the introduction for my book.
Oh,
and
nice.
Entrepreneurs on Fire is, one of my favorite podcasts. And
I've
he's
listened to it
accomplished
before.
lifestyle freedom, geographic freedom, financial freedom. And, I was using his journals, the Freedom Journal, the Mastery Journal. And I guess the Freedom Journal, really, my goal was to kind of monetize. So the first thing I did was I started a mastermind, and I really made it an incredible offer. And I just had like 6 people that I knew wanted to start a business, and, a handful of people that had a business. And it was so much fun to use video conference, before it was the norm, and just help those 2 sets of groups. And that was kind of the first taste of really, helping to do it. And, of course, I knew that I had been coaching and developing our leaders for 14 years as the operator. But definitely I am enjoying helping people in all industries as well, and not really like focusing on physical therapy and fitness.
Yeah, same. It brings joy to me too. I have people from all, just because I'm very visible. And again, there's businesses popping up around here left and right, and people from like whatever. That's how I kind of realized what was happening in my life and who I was becoming. I was just working. I was just a guy, literally boots in the street, sleeves rolled up, hands in everything. And people just started to come to me left and right from like
for
all
business
kinds of
advice.
different things.
They were asking
and I was like, I don't know. Like, and they're like, no, you know. And I'm like, really? And then I would give advice, and they would take it, and they would come back and be like, man, that really works. I was like,
that's leadership right there.
Yeah. Well, and I was leading, employees too. And so it all kind of, it started to sink in. And I was like, oh, I didn't set out like, I'm going to be this. I want to be this. It just kind of happened. But then once I realized it, I was like, people say I'm good at it.
And you're doing some coaching now?
I haven't monetized it, but that's certainly, you're doing a lot of the things that I would like to do. I'd like to put out a book one day. That would be fantastic. Yeah. I'd definitely like to get into coaching, and again, diversifying, because I've been all brick and mortar thus far.
Right. And I can understand the risk and pain of brick and mortar. So
6,000 square feet, man, I don't have that much in like 5 locations. Just like my head just started to hurt when you said that. I was just like, oh.
And that's a personal guarantee. That's our very first lease. So there's real risk and real pain in entrepreneurship.
Huge. Yeah. So getting into something that like doesn't have rent, very little regulation in terms of like government agencies coming in and dipping their hands in the pot as well, but I just enjoy it. And if you ask any of my employees or the people that spend a lot of time around me, like, what do I like to do the most? And it's just like to talk to people and to help people, that's how I ended up in customer service in restaurants. I love food, but I also love to just like, you want this experience and like, I can execute it for you. Like, I just want to put that smile on your face. That's really
I think coaching is the right mindset versus consulting, even though my company is Denali Consulting, I really, connect with the coaching mindset. And I don't know if you know Martin Rooney, who's from the fitness world. He's actually
the name's familiar, but I can't say it off the top of my head.
Physical therapist, but he only really did traditional physical therapy for a short period of time. And then he worked with Parisi Speed School, and now he's got training for warriors, and he speaks all over the country. And I think he was their CFO. He's kind of sort of similar to me, learned the business part of things. I think School of Hard Knocks. Yeah. But, I
like that though.
He does you learn better that way by rolling up your sleeves in learning by doing, right? I think that's probably
and under pressure, like not too much. Yeah. But like if you're in that ideal environment, where there's no pressure. You spoke
about that, right? I think you made a reference to Joe Rogan about the right. That was the first, episode I listened to you. I don't remember who the guest was, but there is a certain ideal
the flow state threshold. Yeah. And that's, and studies have shown that, you take information on, you commit it to memory more if there's a little bit of pressure. If it's too easy, it's in there somewhere, but it might be harder to recall. But if we learn through failure,
small failures, as long as they're not big one. That's why I think you need to do a little bit of the strategy work And, you know, I always like to say, a lot of entrepreneurs say, just take action, but I really like to say, take strategic action.
Yeah.
Every day, step back, you know, meditate, do your mindset, think about what your big drivers are, your big, you know, your big boulders, your big needles, what your needle movers are going to be, and try to get those 2 or 3 things done every day. Even as Tim Ferriss says, right, even at the expense of small reversible damage, you have to get those big boulders done.
Man, that's it. And that's straight jujitsu 101. Like, jujitsu is all about strategy. It's about, you know, understanding that there are very common human responses to certain, I don't want to say attacks, but just, you know, certain maneuvers, certain situations. People by and large respond in a very similar fashion. And it's very true in business as well. You see it play out every day. And then you start to narrow down and leave less options until at a certain point, you are the one who's in control. And then you can make the choice to set them free or kick their ass. It's up to you.
I love it.
You can put them to sleep, snap an arm, whatever you like. But they call it human chess because it's a thinking man's, you know, it's thinking man's martial art. It's less athletic and less sporty. Again, to quote Hickson Gracie just earlier this week, he said in one of his first live, you know, these guys are, he's probably in his 60s and just getting into live broadcast. You know, he legendary instructor, but I think he just did his first one recently. And that was one of the things he said. It's like less athleticism. It's more about maneuvering and strategy and timing. And those are a lot of things you're speaking of. You got to be, you know, you have to have the timing right and the finances set up to make that move where you bring in the person that's right, is going to help the business grow. And if you do it too early, you blew it. And it's just like jujitsu.
Timing,
you know?
is so important.
If you wait too long, then you're losing money, you know?
Yeah. Well, you're totally inspiring me to consider jujitsu. And you made me
Silver Fox, man, check him out. He's the best.
In preparation for this talk, you inspired me to think about, I did judo for a little while when I was really young. And then I had a Vietnamese friend, Trung Nguyen. We always butchered his name, I guess, and called him Nguyen. He didn't correct us. But I think it was called Vo Vai Nam that I did maybe 7th or 8th grade. And I mean, it was hard floors we did it on. And I probably just wasn't tough enough, but it did toughen me up a little bit. It was good.
Hard floors are no joke, man.
No. Not throwing each other around and rolling. Yeah, that was challenging.
Yeah, definitely. So what are some of the ways people can get in contact with you? I mean, you have a big panorama here, you know, between Breakthru, between the book, between Denali, you've got social media as well. Where do you like to see your traffic come through, and for what things?
Yeah, well, anyone who's an entrepreneur thinking about starting a business, on my website, you can schedule with me. I'd love to do a complimentary, you know, strategy session, 20 minutes, or, you know, I call it our helpline if you really, you know, need help and don't know who to turn to. So you can do that. My email is Dr. Lance Knaub at Denali Consulting Team.
And what website were you referencing just then?
And the website is denaliconsultingteam.com.
Okay.
And another thing to mention is we talked about the book being a process. So you can, on Amazon, you can read the beginning of the book for free. And within that, you'll see a link to a free workbook, a companion workbook, or you can go to denaliconsultingteam.com/resources for the complimentary workbook, which, you know, will help you, give you the actual action steps. You won't get the stories in each chapter, but you'll get the, you know, the structure to write your personal mission statement and so on, everything we talked about. So consider that. And then on Instagram, I'm at Dr. Lance Knaub, and you'll find me on LinkedIn. Denali Consulting Team has a Facebook page. And I guess one thing that I'm really having fun with is forming a community that it was sparked around the book. There's a Facebook group, a private Facebook group called the 4% Breakthru.
I saw that. Yeah.
So originally I created that in mind to help walk people through the book. And I'm actually doing that. But also it's similar to the book. If you want to develop yourself personally, if you want to develop your professional business skills, and if you want to get and stay healthier, we've got a whole community of like-minded people. Come join us. That's
so awesome, man. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. We're going to have to wrap it up. Really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing everything. We'll have to connect. There's a little buzz in the air about a virtual roundtable with Dr. Saqib and Dom Jackson, and we can break up into our little Zoom corners and hash it out. I think that'd be a really great show.
I would love to do it. And yeah, kudos to you for the podcast. I mean, this is
Thank you.
awesome. You're really bringing out some great information and hope and positivity and strength and resilience and grit. You know, everybody has got it within us. So let's dig deep, get through this, find the opportunities. And yeah, thanks so much. Loved it.
My pleasure, man. Really. Have a great weekend. The rest of you have an awesome weekend. We'll check in with you next week. You're listening to the Entrepreneurial Web. Peace out.